All right, we're gonna begin by painting the background, and I put back in parentheses because you'll often see it just called the ground. And now this was a white canvas that I had painted a background on, then started a painting, then painted over again and didn't like the way it looked. So I just want to encourage you to let layers dry, paint over stuff. Don't be so precious about each painting. You know, we're learning, we're practicing, and it's kind of freeing to just paint over something if it's been frustrating or hasn't gone the way you want. You know, you're always getting great learning from mistakes and things that you don't think look great. You're learning a lot from that, more than from when things go really well, right? So everything you learned from that painting you covered up is worthwhile and valuable, but it's good to know when to move on and just paint over it and move on to the next thing. So this color that came out, I didn't think would really work for the image I'm going to paint because it's kind of was like an orangey color, and I wanted to make something a little more contrasting with the fall colors. So I'm using some phthalo green and some of that red and then white to lighten it up. And I'm just adding the color, mixed color directly onto the canvas, and I'm leaving it kind of streaky. I don't need it to be perfect, but I am thinking about my landscape composition and the colors that I'm going to use. And I am thinking a bit about color theory and color interaction and how this ground color, this background color, right, is going to interact with the colors I'll be painting. So I wanted blue for behind, I wanted this phthalo greenish blue for behind the fall tones, but then behind the sky, I wanted a reddish purple to kind of set off that blue of the sky. So you can really do whatever you want. I'm just showing you, maybe some more options than we've done in the previous paintings, how you can make your ground color several different colors, how you can think about, color interactions. And what I'm thinking about for my interactions is a high contrast. So if I want a high contrast, I'm thinking about things that are different, opposite on the color wheel. I forgot to turn my camera on, so this is me just adding water to that same paint and smoothing it out to kind of make it more creamy. So I literally just added water on my brush, smoothed it out, and got it all blended in there to have a more neutral background. So the next step after the ground dries, wait until it's completely dry so the background paint is dry and not cool to the touch. So if you touch it, none should come off on your hands. And now I'm just gonna sort of sketch with a paintbrush. I'm going to sketch out the basic outlines of my composition. You can always draw with a pencil if you want to. For some reason, I just like painting with the paintbrush and getting it all in. I just like jumping in and getting started with the paint. So I'm choosing a color, I'm choosing ultramarine blue that is similar, and some of the phthalo green that is a similar tone to, and in the same like cool tone as the background color, so that it's blends in a little more and it's just sort of almost coming out of the background, part of the background color. So if you're using your creative thinking here, if you're using your color interaction and color theory knowledge, having that lower contrast between the background and the sketch, the outline colors, can help you because you don't want to have a lot of contrast here. I'm just marking out the outlines. And now I don't like what I did. I made the horizon line. I realized I made it too high. So I'm just putting water on a paper towel and I'm erasing it. And you can do this. That's why it's good that the background is dry, because then you can erase the new layer when the new layer is wet. So we're really working in layers of paint here and taking time to get the composition right. You know, I like the sky of this landscape, so I wanted to make sure to give enough room for that sky, but then there's also some stuff happening in the foreground, so I need to be careful about the placement of all of the elements of my landscape to get everything in the right place, so I make sure my composition is the way I want it to be. And this is where you want to spend time, you know, working things out, or wiping it out, erasing it, wiping it out with water, or you can use a Q-tip like we've done before, and just getting it all in the right place. And so I'm using a similar color to the background so that it's not a high contrast interaction. It's just more of a similar tone so that it's not popping out. It's kind of blending into the background. And then as I paint over it in layers, if I need to change things around and paint over it, it's almost easier to paint over it. You can obviously paint over any color, but I think it's just easier on your eye when the background and the sketch color are similar. It just kind of blends in and it's not as jarring to the eye. I hope that's making sense. So that's why I'm choosing the color I'm choosing for the outline of the paint. And I'm doing it all in the same color just because I'm only thinking about laying out my composition here. I'm not thinking about blocking in any colors. I'm not thinking about values. I'm really just thinking about getting all the elements of the composition in the place I want them to be. And you can see I'm kind of scraping things around and using the side of my brush. I'm being really messy and loose and just kind of moving things around and really getting a feel for the composition and where I want things in this painting, getting a feel for the canvas size and how the composition is all going to work. And you can see the colors changing a little bit. I'm not really super concerned as long as it's like in a similar range as the background color and isn't going to cause too much contrast. That's what I prefer when I'm starting out. Again, you can do whatever you want to do. These are just things that have, you know, helped me. And then having those cool tones, if you are going to let them show through, you know, they work great in shadows. So, you know, you can paint highlights over them, and then if any of them end up showing through, you know, the blue is great for a shadow color, and having those dark colors in the shadows always helps. So I'm just taking time. I'm not getting in all the details here, but I am getting in like the main structures, and especially this tree is really a central focus. I want to make sure to get that in the place that I want it to be and get everything where I want it to be. So really take your time with this step. And then the next step will be blocking in. Since the sky is such a, you know, noticeable element, and I'm going to exaggerate the contrast of the sky a little bit, I am like kind of outlining where the clouds, some of the clouds are, so I can kind of have an idea in my mind about where I want them. And then some of the big shadow shapes I am starting to fill in a little bit, just because that's helps my brain. You know, if that doesn't help your brain, don't do that. And you can see I had you know, outlined a tree in the background just to get that in. Oh, and these little hay bales that are in the field here, which I think are like a sweet detail of this hayfield landscape. So I want to make sure to get those in the right place. So all the things that are like important to me in the composition, I'm getting like making a note of almost with this sketch.